You didn't get this obsessed with just anyone. There's a reason that this person in particular stood out. And it's not fate or magic or some once in a lifetime chemistry, although most obviously limerence can feel that way. But underneath, there are deeper things at work. Because you know very well that lots of people can walk in and out of your life without triggering anything especially intense. But then every now and then someone shows up, and from the very first word or the very first meeting, your system just lights up. There's a spark, that thing that we call the glimmer in limerence, and it's not random. Let's break it down and talk about why only certain people trigger limerence in us and others just pass by unnoticed. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Around here, we talk a lot about how we take our lives back from the lasting effects of childhood trauma, of anxiety, and of emotional chaos and dysregulation in general. And we do this because we want to be able to take our lives in our own hands and live the way we want to live. And today we're talking about what your limerent object actually reveals about you, because limerent objects are not random. They are custom selected by you and you alone. And for that reason, they're usually mirrors or placeholders or projections that we try to externalize out into the world by finding and connecting to people who represent these things. Other times, or at the same time, they're activators of very old patterns living inside of us. Wait, did you subscribe yet? I have a lot more to share, and I'd love to have you here for it. It really helps my channel grow, and I appreciate it so much. So ask yourself, what drew you to this person in the first place? Was it their very obvious confidence? Was it that they seemed emotionally distant or unavailable in some way? Or perhaps they were just the opposite, and they appeared to be really emotionally vulnerable and expressive. Did they make you feel seen right away, or did they kind of make you work for their attention? One part of unconscious attraction is based on what we know as the Jungian archetypes. From Jungian psychology, we get the idea of the Anima or the Animus. And you're probably familiar with these terms. All they are is really unconscious archetypes inside of us that we tend to project onto people we might form relationships with. The anima is the inner feminine, and you'd find that typically in men, and the animus is the inner masculine, typically found in women. But this is not really about gender. It's about psychological forces that live inside all of us. And these archetypes represent parts of us that are real, but they're often unexpressed, especially in our conscious everyday lives. And because, well, we don't really know how to access these parts of ourselves, we unconsciously project them outward onto anyone who might become a romantic partner, or anyone who seems like they might fit that role of a romantic partner for us. So when we come across someone who feels magnetic and larger than life and emotionally overwhelming, it's often because they embody traits that match these archetypes that we all have inside of us. And what we're seeing and what we're drawn to by extension is actually a missing part of ourselves. These romantic archetypes, they tend to bypass the logical mind completely. Instead, they go past it and they go straight to our emotional core. They go to the part of us that's already deeply rooted and has many expectations about what a romantic partner should look like, should sound like, should feel like. The kind of partner who on some level we believe unconsciously could make us whole. And that's why this kind of connection can feel so sudden and powerful and all-consuming, because we're not just falling in love with this person who's suddenly appeared, we're falling in love with the projection of a part of us that we have trouble accessing on our own. And more than anything, we actually want access to these pieces of ourselves. Let me give you a very real example from my own life. For me, I tend to project onto men who carry this dreamy-eyed, poetic softness in their eyes and in their overall energy, right? Let's call it that. And what's so compelling about them isn't just them and their emotional openness and rawness, which obviously is appealing to me, but it's what being around them brings out in me. These types of men give me access to a part of myself that I have a hard time expressing. The emotional softness and vulnerability and imagination, and that access, that ability to feel more whole and more emotionally open, that's the part that for me can very quickly become addictive. In fact, this is something a lot of people feel, but they don't know how to name it. They don't know how to express it. But you're not just projecting an ideal onto other people. Very often you're experiencing temporary access to a disowned part of yourself through them. Essentially, these people allow you to access these parts of yourself. And that experience of feeling more whole and more emotionally expanded, in my case at least, that's what fuels that original attraction. I have more videos planned that go deeper into how these difficult to access parts of ourselves show up in limerence, and why this feels so magical and addictive when we gain access to them. Another part of unconscious attraction is that limerent objects usually remind you of someone. And this is where things sort of compound onto each other and they get more interesting and also a lot more complex. Sometimes the people who trigger limerence the fastest are the ones who remind us of a parent or of a caregiver, especially if that caregiver couldn't give us the kind of love we needed when we were young. And because of the nature of this limerent bond, right, the instability and the uncertainty that's built right into limerence, we're not usually drawn to these people because we had a stable connection with that caregiver, right? If it was that case, we would just choose a person we were super compatible with and form a really nice, long-lasting relationship. But it's usually the exact opposite. So your nervous system is not detecting compatibility with this person. And that's another reason why limerent bonds so seldom work out into real, stable relationships. Because your nervous system is actually detecting familiarity. And compatibility and familiarity are worlds apart. They don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. Unless familiarity to you is really awesome things, because you only have great memories of your childhood. You're on this channel for the wrong reasons. Let me give you another example of how this works to fully flesh it out, right? Let's say I walk into a room with 6 men talking, hanging out, and one of them has that dreamy-eyed kind of low-key, sheepish softness that I like, right? Let's call it that. But at the same time, he's loud and kind of boisterous, and he has the attention of the other men. And something about his mannerisms or his attitude give him a solid dose of what I would say are narcissistic traits. That's how I would recognize them. Now I've combined my Jungian archetype with my father. It's over. My subconscious immediately tags this man as intensely attractive. Not because of anything he said, not because of anything he's done, certainly, and definitely not because of who he is, but simply because my nervous system recognizes those traits as the same ones I associate with my father and with the Animus figure I already have inside of me. That's not romantic attraction. It's pure psychological recognition. And this is how we get ourselves into all kinds of troublesome situations, being attracted to people who are not suitable for us, right? Because recognition and compatibility, not the same thing. But that doesn't stop my brain from trying to replay an old emotional pattern that I'm still trying to resolve. Maybe this time, this kind of men can act normal and love me properly. Experience has taught me that it's highly unlikely, but that doesn't stop my instant recognition of such men, right? This pattern to me is highly personal. Your pattern is highly personal to you. To really understand why you get hooked in this way, you have to look at a few things together. First, that inner archetype that you carry around, right? The kinds of people that you tend to be attracted to in general because of your own unexpressed parts. Because these images are emotionally magnetic to you. Then you have to look at your early environment. What kinds of personalities did you grow up around? Who were the larger than life figures in your childhood? And what patterns did you absorb from these people about love and attention and power, or about emotional availability? At least that. When you put those two things together, the part of you that's been disowned or that you don't have access to, and the kinds of people that you were conditioned to sort of orbit, for the rest of your life, you get a very specific emotional formula. And sometimes if you're lucky, like I said, and you're not on this channel a lot, that formula creates a beautiful picture. It creates a picture of a really stable and awesome human. But if you're here because you grew up in emotional volatility like I did, or emotional trauma, then chances are that formula creates more pain than stability. So then when you fall into a limerent obsession with someone, it's usually because that emotional formula has been activated. So it's not that this person is perfect. It's that they are familiar in a very specific and particular way. And they're holding pieces of stories that you're probably still trying to finish in your unconscious mind. And that's why limerence feels so intense, because we're not just falling for this particular person. We're falling into old patterns or projections or longings that we've carried inside of us most of our adult lives. And until we understand why someone feels so magnetic, we can keep confusing that magnetism for compatibility. But once you understand the why, then you can stop chasing the person, because the person is often a bit irrelevant in limerence. It's more about really getting to know yourself at the end of the day. And in this way, you can start reclaiming the parts of yourself that you've been trying to find in other people. If you enjoy this kind of content, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.